power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Rory Smith in the GB Newsroom. ITV says This Morning will air as normal tomorrow, following reports the show could be axed. But staff members say executives need to prove they're properly addressing the issue of Philip Schofield's affair with a young employee. Sources have told GB News that bosses have just 7 days to save the programme. We asked some viewers their opinions.
It's not really for us to judge someone. I mean, what he did, if it's true that this young chap was 18, it's nothing to do with us. I think he should speak to his family.
I will say that I think perhaps the show needs fresh people on. I think that the show really relied on the chemistry that Holly and Phil had.
For me, I'm less keen to watching the programs with them. As they split, I'm all right, and I think that Holly's gonna get the career even bigger now, you know.
I like Phil and Holly, so I'm very sad to see them go, because I love them both. So it's a pity, really. And I was shocked to hear about Phil, because I didn't think he'd do anything like that, be so deceitful.
In Turkey, President Erdogan has won the presidential election to take his rule into a third decade. Erdogan received just over 52% of the vote, with Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu securing nearly 48%. His rival is refusing to admit defeat, calling it an unfair election. Rishi Sunak has sent his congratulations, saying he looks forward to continuing a strong collaboration between the UK and Turkey. A man has been charged with the murder of a 17-year-old boy in Sheffield. Mohammed Iqbal was stabbed to death in the Crooks area on Thursday and later died in hospital. 29-year-old Peshoa Ghafoor from the city will appear in court tomorrow charged with his murder. Well, earlier today, a 33-year-old man was also arrested on suspicion of assisting an offender. The government is launching an ad campaign to stop people from crossing the channel. The advert, set to be circulated in Albania next week, will warn people they face being detained and removed if they make the journey. Critics have already branded it as pointless, saying it won't deter them. Well, a record number of people made the crossing in small boats last year, and more than 6,000 have been intercepted so far this year. TV, online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now though, time for headliners.
Hello, I'm Leo Kearse and welcome to Headliners. Joining me tonight for a look through Monday's papers, we're lucky to have 2 comedians who actually read them. Josh Howie and Francis Foster. How are you both doing?
Very well, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, not bad. Been out in the sunshine?
Oh, I've been out in the sunshine, decided I didn't like it and went back inside.
Very British. Anyway, let's have a look at those front pages. The Daily Mail leads with TV doctor hits out at toxic this morning. The Telegraph has price caps will create shortages, Prime Minister warned. The Times has British police bid to stop migrants leaving Africa. The Guardian go with Met Police to stop going to mental health call-outs. The Mirror has Holly, I'll be staying. And finally, the Daily Star has Dr. Ranj blasts bully culture at ITV. And those were your front pages. And let's have a closer look at those front pages, starting with Monday's Daily Mail, Josh.
Yep, so there's a picture of Kylie Minogue there. They're saying, is Grand Prix Kylie set to race back up the charts? Because, you know, she went to the Grand Prix. And that's why they've literally done that photo and taken up quarter of the paper. Because really what we want to fully focus on, of course, is more Philip Schofield. And they've...
Of course.
This Dr. Ranj, he's saying there was bullying. Some people were saying, is the show going to go under or not? I can't... Why does anybody care? I don't know. It's not, supposedly. I mean, even if it went under, they're going to call it a different name.
It would be like when News of the World went down. It's just replaced with The Sun on Sunday.
Yeah, it doesn't make any difference. The only thing that matters was when they lost Big Breakfast.
Yeah.
That was hurt. That was pain. But apart from that, this whole thing is just going on and on.
But these accusations by Dr. Ranj, like bullying accusations, from a grown man, by the way, not from a 7-year-old girl.
From a doctor.
From a doctor.
Yeah, look, what can you say about this? All you know is that no one is really being honest about what's happening.
Well, you be honest. This is your chance. Come on, say it.
Yeah, so let's take down this station. Let's get it sued. Let's use the...
Let's get you sued.
Yeah, exactly. Let's use the P word, as in Philip.
Whoa!
Anyway, but no, look, there's obviously a lot more that's about to come out with this story. Everybody's tiptoeing around it. There is an unexploded bomb here.
Right.
And I can't wait to see a good man getting destroyed.
But you're not going to speculate right now because we like having a broadcasting licence.
Exactly.
Good.
Perfect.
Anyway, moving on. What have the Telegraph got in the front cover, Francis?
So, the Daily Telegraph, being the highbrow publication that they are, Leo, have gone for price caps will create shortages, PM warned. So what is happening is retailers are warning Rishi Sunak that he can't impose 1970s price caps on the very basic goods that we rely on day in, day out, things like eggs and bread and milk, because if the Tories do that, then what will happen is that suppliers will sell their produce elsewhere. Now, obviously, that worked more in the 1970s because we didn't have a globalised market.
But it didn't work in the 1970s.
But it worked more than it will work now.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it seems ridiculous, Josh, for the Tories as well, the party who are supposed to be, certainly used to be the party of free markets and capitalism and innovation and successful business, to be imposing communist-style price caps.
Because they're desperate, and Rishi Sunak is desperate because inflation was meant to be coming down quicker than it was. Than it is. It's gone down to like 8.9 or something. It's less than 10%, but it's meant to be more like 5% right now.
Yeah, and also on food, it's actually way high.
20% with food, and so food is what's driving it up. So they're desperate to bring down. I wonder if they know that it wouldn't work. First of all, but the threat of the different Waitrose and Morrisons and all the supermarkets saying that these producers will just take their stuff elsewhere. The good news is that with all the red tape that we have because of Brexit, they've got to sell it. That's the positive side. But I think it's a warning. I think it's a shot across the bow, and they're saying, don't put up the prices too much more. And the reality is, and I don't know if you guys do your shopping or not, I do my shopping, the household shopping, it's noticeable. You're getting way less for way more.
And also there are some companies that have taken the opportunity to put up their prices. I mean, I'm not looking at Heinz ketchup.
No,
some things have just gone ridiculously high that can't be accounted for. I mean, I understand there's a war in Ukraine, but that doesn't mean that tomato ketchup is suddenly, got to be 3 times as expensive.
Well, look, it's good that you boys know about prices. I don't, because I'm a real man, mate. Get the woman to do it. Anyway, marvellous.
No, that's why I'm a real man. That's why I don't trust her to do it. She never looks at the deals and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly.
And also they've got the slightly surprising results from Turkey's election there.
52% to Erdogan. So he's just squeaked it, even though apparently no one's really like him. He isn't popular. And the opposition leader is saying that something's happening here, which is incredibly dodgy. But it doesn't matter. Viva Erdogan.
Yeah, 52%, that's nothing. I mean, that really 48% is the most important thing to focus on here.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
He's been in power now for 20 years.
Yeah.
Arguably more and more dictatorial.
Yep.
And it's a shame because having this guy, supposedly he was quite boring, his opponent, but it was a coalition of the sort of centre-left that were coming to take him down because he has been, Erdogan has been slowly demolishing these democratic institutions.
And he hasn't been governing, particularly well. I mean, there's been hyperinflation in Turkey.
Absolutely. And then also you had, obviously, the earthquake over there, but there was a lot of, because there was just a lot of shoddy building and whatnot. Lots of people extra died because of that. So I think this is bad news for Turkey. I think it's bad news for the world, to be honest, because Turkey is a power. It's a regional power. It has influence.
Oh, huge influence.
And so
it's really, it's a key point for dealing with so many things like Russia and Ukraine, and also with the flow of refugees coming from the Middle East.
Absolutely. So I don't think this is a good thing.
Okay.
But we'll see if this opponent sticks around or something happens to him.
Yeah. Well, 5 years' time
has a Schofield.
Anyway, what's on the front cover of Monday's Times, Josh?
There's quite a disturbing story here about poor maternity care left us in danger, says 1 in 4 mothers. And it's sad because there's one statistic here that I just want to read out, which is the NHS is spending twice as much on the cost of harm caused by maternity services as they are on the actual maternity care itself. That is a somewhat terrifying statistic, a number or whatever. And of course, we have reduction in funding for all across the NHS, all across all of our services, but maternity care is so vital, so important that they have good people. I'm just grateful that we had our children a few years ago.
Yeah.
But even then, there were definite holes in the system.
Yeah, no, I just had a baby. I mean, not me personally, but my wife.
You can have a baby, mate.
We're 2023, but no matter how I identify, I don't think I can. But yeah, we were, there were some. We were surprised. It wasn't, the sort of gold-plated standard you'd expect from the NHS. Yeah. But Francis, I want to talk about the other story on there. British police are in a bid to stop migrants leaving Africa.
So this is the police. This is a policy which is trying to stop immigration at its source, and they're going to work with Algeria and Tunisia in order to try and make it happen. The reality is immigration in this country is completely out of control.
Yeah.
They're predicting not only that it's reached 500,000, it might reach 1 million over a year. Illegal immigration from the boats alone is estimated to be around 80,000. So we are trying, the British government rather, are actually trying everything in their power in order to try and solve this problem. But the reality is this is going to be a challenge, I think, for all Western nations moving forward.
Well, for Europe. But the reality is that 600,000 net is mostly made up of people we have invited over to this country.
I haven't invited them, mate.
Well, they have been invited over. If you're going to go into a hospital at all, you're going to need these people. We're going to get to that story in a minute.
But the point is, the British people, we've seen this explosion in immigration since the Tony Blair years, and despite repeated government promises that they're going to bring it down to sort of more manageable levels where it doesn't cause social discord and doesn't, inflame, frankly, racism.
I'm just saying that they use the figure here of 400,000 people trying to cross. And my point is, when you bring up the huge figures of immigration that we have, this is not it. That's not the reason why. It's because of Ukrainians coming over, because of people from Hong Kong coming over,
but people
invited over to run our NHS. My point is, this is not the same as that.
We've got problematic immigration, which I think is the small boats crossings. I mean, nobody's saying, Ukrainians are culturally similar to us. They don't form grooming gangs or anything like that. There's not that issue. I remember when I worked with the police, we had an issue with an increase in the rise. The sort of severity of violence in street gangs. And it was because Somalian kids were coming who'd been exposed to horrific violence, and they were coming as refugees, and quite rightly they had a right to claim refuge, claim sanctuary in another country. But, because they'd been exposed to that violence and they were used to that violence, it was causing all sorts of problems.
And the problem as well, we have a declining birth rate in this country. Our birth rates, they're going through the floor in the majority of Western culture.
Speak for yourself, mate.
You're doing your bit, Joshy, but as a result, we have a labour shortage in this country, and how else are you going to plug it?
Robots. Anyway, what's on the front cover of The Guardian?
So, The Guardian goes with the Erdogan story, but the main story in The Guardian is the Met Police are going to stop going to mental health call-outs, and the Metropolitan Police will no longer attend emergency calls related to mental health incidents, the Forces Commissioner has said. And his argument is it is simply taking up too much time. So the police are turning up. They're having to deal with these unfortunate people who are very, very mentally unwell. And I'm going to read out a couple of stats for you. The officers spend almost 1 million hours a year waiting in hospitals for mental health patients to be assessed. That is equivalent of attending 500,000 domestic abuse incidents or 600,000 burglaries. And
how many misgenderings?
6. And the Met officers spend 10,000 hours a month dealing with these issues. And his argument is this is not an effective use of police resources.
Right, yeah.
Because what these people actually need is a mental health specialist who is going to come, or somebody from the NHS in order to deal with it, not a police officer.
But the problem is,
Josh,
we're talking about violence, aren't we? I mean, that's why the police are there.
But they're still going to, if there's a threat to life, they're still going to send the police out. I mean, don't you think the police could actually
Well, threat to life is different from threat to violence.
Yeah,
you see what I mean? Like protecting...
No, it's not. But don't you think...
It's not?
No, it's not.
Threat to violence and threat to life?
Yeah, violence. If somebody's threatening violence, that's not a threat
to life, is it?
Yeah.
OK.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to give you a Chinese burn.
That's not a threat to violence, because I wouldn't even feel that, because I'm a real man. Anyway, that's the front pages thoroughly dealt with. Coming up, the three of us will solve the energy crisis and climate change. See you in a couple of minutes.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway...
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Leo Kearson. I'm taking a brisk stroll through Monday's newspapers with comedians Josh Howie and Francis Foster. Kicking things off with the Times, and it looks like Starmer is trying to get votes in Scotland by making sure we don't have to do any hard work, Josh.
Yeah, this is quite an interesting story. Starmer plans to block all new North Sea oil and gas developments. He wants all the government money that's invested to go into only green stuff and turn us into a sort of a green, clean energy superpower, is the words. Now, that all sounds nice. Can they do it? Of course, who knows? I mean, you know, it's not like the present government is actually doing anything, but it does. Sounds good.
Britain is a clean energy. I mean, it's way out ahead in clean energy.
Well, but we have had, like, they're putting a lot of it into, they're saying, into offshore wind, which is where we are now doing really well, and that actually
there's a lot of wind there.
But the main problem here is that 85% of our boilers are still run on gas. So who is going to pay for those boilers to be changed over? That's the stuff that's going to affect the families and people directly. Yeah. So that they haven't sort of acknowledged anything there. I know you've got a lot you want to say about this.
Yeah, but because the problem is that you go, right, we're going to have 85% green energy. That is fantastic. We're all going to have our pronouns in our bio. Wonderful. The problem is with this green energy, it's not as reliable as the current sources of energy. And as a result, the energy that it produces is far more expensive. So you get a lot less bang for your buck. If we want reliable, clean energy, why haven't we done nuclear?
Well, I agree with you. I think it's a balance between those different things. But I also think, I just want to say, going back to the point you were making, this is also about playing politics. And it's quite a great way of sticking it to the SNP, because part of their economic policy, as they always call for independence, is like, oh no, we've got all the North Sea oil, that's what's going to keep us afloat.
No, the SNP.
Well, I know they're saying that
they've been wanting to.
That's only because the Green are in coalition with them, but
this seems
like
a massive own goal for Starmer, because Scotland needs those jobs, and the gas and oil is there, and it seems stupid not to employ Scots to get it.
But he's saying that they'll employ Scots in this sort of renewable element industry that they're going to be
but why not? I mean, the infrastructure is there for oil and gas. Why
There's
not?
There's a little thing called global warming.
There is a little thing.
Yeah, just a little thing.
And it's something. I mean, fine.
It's little for you.
But it might be an issue in 100 years or whatever. But I mean, right now, people need jobs, and right now we need to not be dependent on places like Russia for hydrocarbons. So getting them from Scotland, which is a slightly less authoritarian country, seems like a good idea.
But not having hydrocarbons at all, and which is what they're talking about moving towards.
So we'll get solar energy in Scotland. That sounds fantastic.
Beautiful Scotland.
Moving on, we've got the Telegraph, and this story might have solved our energy problem, because scientists have invented a machine that makes electricity from thin air. Although unfortunately, due to Britain's obesity crisis, the air is fat.
That's a very good joke. Well done. I have never read a story before that made me feel quite so stupid, but here we go. So scientists create a machine that harvests clean energy out of thin air. So the fingernail-sized contraption is made from a material filled with holes less than 1,000th of the width of a human hair. And so these holes are called nanopores, right? And they make clean air by harvesting the energy from electrically charged water in the air that passes through them.
This all sounds like mumbo-jumbo.
Yeah, so it's basically like a cloud. You know, like how a cloud generates energy which creates lightning and thunder?
Like in Back to the Future.
Exactly. So this is what these boys are doing. I don't know how they've done it. I don't know.
Let me explain it to you, Martin. No, they've got super small holes, because basically, like, water particles are like that.
Yeah.
And so they do these holes that are small enough.
You look like you're doing sex ed, mate.
No, this would be much smaller. Imagine it much smaller than this. And then the air particles go like blah, 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 and they hit the sides of the
That's how I do it as well.
Go, and that creates the energy. So that's what it is. So all these water particles, and then as they go through to a lower level, that creates the differential. And creates electricity. But it's very simple.
They're a bit thin in the article about how much energy they can actually create from these nanopores.
Loads. Like, look.
Do you know what? You've got the vibe of a kind of, I'd say, Schofield-era BBC children's TV presenter.
I don't think they're going to be asking for you to present this morning.
Excuse me, the person who I've invited to work experience is very offended by that.
He's having a great time, isn't he?
Anyway, the Mirror now, and the MP's expenses scandal seems to have disappeared into the rear-view mirror for these politicians.
Oh, very nice, very nice. OK, Tory MPs claim hundreds of pounds, literally £200, in driving fines back on expenses sparking fury. So this is a couple of Tory MPs and an SNP MP, and basically they have claimed they're like £80 fixed penalty notices and whatnot, and put it under travel expenses. Now, I tried that with my accountant a few years ago. I was like, come on, mate, I got a parking ticket. 40 quid, surely that's travel expense. Yeah, I was like, I had to park, I was late for a gig, I had to park outside, whatever. It was like, no. So the idea that, you know, our independent parliamentary standards authority, after the big scandal that we had with expenses, that they didn't know, and they all said, oh, it was just an accident. Like, come on, no, they were chancing it, and they got the money, and now they've said, oh no, we paid it back now. Yeah, after you were busted for it. What they then try to do in this article in the Mirror is then link it all to Suella Braverman and all the row that happened with her parking thing, which was, as Lewis would say, a nan story. Or I miss good old 80s Tory scandal. That's like bondage. This is pathetic.
Whips and chains.
Yeah.
Gimp masks. That's what we want.
Well, ticket expenses. Get the bondage out, mate.
Yeah,
Tories,
exactly.
sort it out. You've only got a couple of months in power. Do some cool stuff.
Get back to basics.
Anyway, what about this one on the RAF's questionable recent recruitment drive, Francis?
Yes, so the RAF, the RAF chief has admitted basically these diversity quotas haven't worked, and actually they were against the law. So of the 1,500 pilots in the force at the end of last year, just 40 were women and 10 were from ethnic minorities.
Wow.
Exactly, which proves that it's working. Now, so what has happened is they tried to make it more equitable, have more diversity, but the targets were too high.
And they basically tried to block white men from applying. And I mean,
exactly.
In Britain, it's an 86% white country.
Yeah.
Men are, generally the best at flying planes, I should imagine.
Absolutely.
I've just seen some driving. So.
and as a result of that, just saying what they were told that what they did was actually unlawful.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know much about this being a pilot and whatnot. I imagine there are physical elements to the job as well. As we know now, men and women are biologically different. I'm not sure the stresses on the body and whatnot. But look, the best people for the job. Brilliant. We want the best people who are defending our country, who are risking their lives for our country up there. Whether they are a man, woman, whatever ethnic minority are, that should be the sole focus. If it turned out to be 100% women, fantastic. Get them out there, do it.
And this said, so any remaining, they said any RAF training places should be filled with any remaining women and ethnic minorities that are ready, even if the candidates are not first past the post. So they're prioritising candidates that weren't as good over better candidates purely to hit some.
So you're saying the women were like hitting the post?
Yeah.
Just like women's football. Anyway, moving on, we've got The Guardian now with the shocking claim that the government isn't delivering on an election pledge, Josh.
Oh, indeed. Has this government actually done anything? They delivered the Brexit. Well done.
They've raised immigration.
Everything else. Steve Barclay admits 40 new hospitals will not be built by 2030. Now, this is just the genius of this government, is what it's really good at is just redefining everything. So, like, they were like, oh, we've got NHS waiting lists. You know what we're going to do? We're just going to drop a bunch of surgeries and a bunch of treatments. So now we don't have those waiting lists anymore. And this is what they're doing, is Steve Barclay is redefining what new means. So new doesn't mean like a new pair of shoes. He means like, no, if you put in like new laces, That's a new pair of shoes. Nah, mate. And he's going, oh, no, and people won't notice, and this is what the people want. It's like, yeah, we'll see in the next election.
But, Francis, don't you think that, I mean, during an election, people can be quick to make promises, and you need something that sounds good. So 40 new hospitals sounds good. But, in fact, in real life, it might be better to build a new wing on an existing hospital or...
I quite agree with you.
Do nothing on other hospitals.
Look, I think you've got a fair point. Then just don't lie.
Don't lie?
Yeah, just don't lie. How about you just don't lie and you actually say something which is honest for a change?
Politicians don't lie.
What people want is lower waiting lists. They want extra capacity. And this is not necessarily what is going to be delivered here. Yes, some of these hospitals that they're now working on need to be refitted, but that isn't the same as a new hospital. And we're not idiots. I mean,
some of us
a little
are,
bit,
yeah.
But do you know what I mean? Even I know the difference between new and refurbishment.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I sort of filter everything a politician says through, it's like reading The Guardian. It's not an absolute objective truth. Anyway, that's it for this section. But coming up, we've got immigration making rents soar, people in Sweden loving Brexit, and people in the countryside not loving the Tories. See you in 2 minutes.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Welcome back to Headliners. We're kicking things off in this section with The Telegraph, and record immigration is pushing up rents. And the government is planning to make the situation worse, Francis.
Yes, so record immigration, Leo, has driven up rents by 8% as Michael Gove's reforms will trigger a further drop in supply. So what the Conservative government have done is they've made it less profitable for landlords, which as a result of that, a lot of landlords have sold their stock. So a lot of people are buying this rented stock and they're living in it as private homes.
No!
So there's fewer rental properties available.
So there is fewer...
They're increasing taxes on landlords.
People are owning their homes.
Yeah.
And they're not being ripped off by landlords anymore.
People need to rent homes. People don't get ripped off.
I know
by
people
landlords.
people need to own their homes.
Yeah. So the solution to all this is to build more homes.
No, like the issue here is record immigration is driving up rents across Britain. This isn't about Tory taxes or anything.
But that's the background. So already there's a decreasing rental stock there, coupled with the fact that you have record immigration, which then means that rents are going through the roof and people are finding it more and more difficult to find a place to live in this city.
Yeah, I mean, isn't a solution to this, Josh, to make cross-channel migrants bring a house with them?
Yes, or build their house, which is why some of them came over. But what we have here is a situation that's mostly affecting around the rest of the country in terms of immigration, because we have most people then come foreign-born people that live in London. It's mostly affecting London and the south. Yeah. But they also, as they point out, first of all, they say up to 8%. But the fact, it's already a terrible situation for people renting. Like, we know people, a lot of people who are just a few years younger, who are spending way more than they would on a mortgage, just renting very basic rooms and whatnot. And the fact that it's got worse, but even though they're trying to make it about immigration, they do also then say we've got international students coming back to university, we have overseas travel restrictions.
Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, absolutely. But it's not what the idea of people just coming over on boats and whatnot.
This is
and lockdown restrictions. We have a lot of people who moved to their parents' homes or moving back to cities. So these are all factors as to why the prices have gone up, rent prices. As you said, it's about building homes. Yeah. That is what's going to bring down these prices ultimately.
And maybe limit, having a sensible number of people coming into the country.
But rent prices will still be high. But rent prices will still be astronomical, regardless.
This is the thing. Isn't this exactly what the landlord class want? I mean, the rents are soaring, property values will be going up with increased demand.
But they have to keep less of that money now because they've been taxed.
Because they're being taxed so much. But look at this stat. Annual rent growth in London hit 17% in December.
Yeah.
And I know so many people who say, this is anecdotally, but so many people are saying this, you don't even get to view a property anymore when you go to look at a property to rent in London. What happens is you go, right, I'm interested in X property. And then they have a kind of bidding war between everybody, and the person who offers the highest one wins, and you never get to see the property until you literally move in.
And then you move in and you find it's a little cupboard under the stairs like Harry Potter. That is literally the London rental market.
Philip Schofield's house.
Yeah.
Anyway. It's cheap. I'm sorry, Philip.
Yeah,
it works.
It doesn't make any sense.
But he loves to enter a tenant, so...
Moving on, it looks like The Guardian doesn't like Brexit. I'm shocked, Josh.
Indeed. Well, I don't know if it's The Guardian who don't like Brexit, as more than half of voters now want Britain to forge closer ties with the EU, poll reveals. This isn't about rejoining the EU. This is about fixing and repairing our economic relationship with them. And certainly, and it's a strange thing here because they're talking about this poll, 10,000 voters that they surveyed, and they're giving them these false dichotomy of options where they're going, would you like a closer relationship, in which case 3 times the amount of people said yes, rather than a more distant relationship, which most people now don't. Only 10% of people want a more distant thing. That's not what it is. People now just want the economic thing to be sorted out.
Yes.
And that isn't about rejoining the EU. Yeah. That's about getting rid of this red tape. That's about going back to where we were.
This sounds more like being in the single market rather than being, ruled from Brussels.
Yes, absolutely. The reason why people one of the main reasons, I should say, why people wanted to leave the EU was to be in control of immigration, because they didn't like freedom of movement. They wanted more control over immigration. That hasn't happened. So you think to yourself, quite frankly, what has been the point of Brexit?
People didn't vote to be poorer, and they didn't necessarily vote because it wasn't part of the actual vote.
Poorer.
No, but they didn't vote to leave the single market, and that is arguably what people weren't put to them.
I don't know. I think you're projecting onto what people thought they were voting for. Anyway, moving on, we're staying with Brexit, with the Daily Mail. And Brexit might not be popular with some people, but in Sweden it's seen as inspirational, Francis.
Yes, a Eurosceptic Swedish MP today praised Brexit as inspirational and branded the EU a union no voter wants. And what he was talking about is essentially the move for the EU, which started, as, the common market, as it was called in the 1970s. We were asked, I think the referendum was in 1972, we asked the British public whether they wanted to join the common market. What we have now more and more is we're moving towards a federal states of Europe, where it is going to be governed essentially by the EU. And a lot of people in a lot of countries feel deeply uncomfortable with this because it means giving up sovereignty. And they also feel deeply uncomfortable.
The bureaucracy and the wastage and when you get any large government ruling a collection of a federation of countries like that, there's going to be so much waste.
There's waste in this country. With a small government ruling country, you've got all of that wastage.
Yeah, but at least when it's closer, when it's more focused in, you can see your issues and deal with your issues closer in, rather than
we're not doing at all.
Yeah.
As a country, I'm just saying our situation is terrible now because of what's going on. It's not like we replace one thing for another bad thing. But this article, I think, is ridiculous. Firstly, it's a huge interview with this guy, an MEP, and a Eurosceptic Swedish, one person. And then also, let's talk about his real quote here. He said, well, so from a democracy point of view, Brexit was inspirational, but there were other factors to take into account. Sweden is an exporting nation. We need to look at how the trade for the UK is working. It's not. So he's not. They've taken this one little bit and then built this huge hoo-ha about it. Well, and he's basically said, oh, it's actually pretty terrible.
Someone's a Ramona.
Yeah, British trade has been... I mean, yeah, you lost, Josh. Get over it.
Yeah, exactly.
No, we all lost, is my point.
I voted Remain as well.
So did I.
Now I've seen how much it upsets you. I actually quite like it. But, I mean, British service exports are doing a roaring trade. I mean, manufacturing's not going so well, but I mean, I think Britain can muddle through and make the best of it. Anyway, we've got the Daily Mail now, and it looks like the Tories' reinvention as a left-wing party hasn't been popular with their core voters in the countryside, Josh.
Yeah, so new poll finds surge in support for Labour in rural areas could put top Tories, including Chancellor Jeremy Hunt, at risk of losing their seats in the general election. So this is a poll in 100 most rural constituencies, and essentially, Labour are doing pretty good, Tories are doing pretty bad, and this is obviously mirrored across the full country, but the rest of the country. But you've got people like Jacob Rees-Mogg, GBNews' own Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Mark Spencer could fall to Labour. Essentially the poll is saying that people who live in rural places don't feel like their needs are being met by this government.
Francis, do you think the Tories have just drifted away from their core values?
Well, you say they've drifted away from their core values. Does anybody actually know what the modern-day Conservative Party represents?
Can we just stay with what Margaret Thatcher...
hunting.
Just stay with what Margaret Thatcher represented. Free markets, liberty...
No. What, the EU? No. Yeah, good. Single market. Fantastic. Let's do it.
Anyway, moving on, we've got the Telegraph now, and the BBC want to erase the existence of an indigenous people. But it's white British people, so that's presumably OK, Francis.
Well, there you go. Thanks for that, mate. No, BBC page for school children claims every person in Britain is descended from immigrants. And people have pushed back on it, saying these are politically correct cliches. And this is the actual quote that they said. Pupils are told at the beginning of the BBC's revision guide that every single person living in Britain today is descended from immigrants. And actually, that's not really true. Cambridge historian Professor Robert Toombs said continuous mass immigration large enough to have a major demographic effect only dates from the Blair era and is completely unprecedented in our history.
So that's 20 years rather than, going back millennia.
Exactly. So it's almost like the BBC are very left-leaning and liberal and like to spout these kind of things.
Well, at the same time, technically they are right. There were settlers who came to this country.
How many millions of years ago?
Well, not millions. Well, OK, the first settlers were 25,000
would you
years ago.
say to indigenous Americans or Inuit that, you're immigrants?
Everybody, essentially, across... if you're going to technically... The history of humanity is based on immigration. That's just the reality of it. But yes, of course, more recent immigration has, and arguably hasn't had the impact that they're trying to say, but that's what's happened across this world, is people migrated, tribes and whatnot, and that's how communities started.
You're talking like hundreds of thousands
OK, but you had
years
the
ago.
Saxons and the Danes and...
Australopithecus or whatever, migrating across that.
I'm saying, technically, whatever. Look, forget it. Look, I'm children of immigrants or grandchildren of it. What about you? You got your
I'm a child of immigrants.
You're a child of immigrants. What are you?
I can trace my family history all the way back to, actually, my granddad. I can't go back further than that. I've got no idea.
OK.
Right, so...
I do tan well.
Anyway, there we go.
Anyway, that's this section done. Coming up in our final section, we've got war in space, aliens on Earth, and remembering Harambe, the 400-pound gorilla who touched all of our hearts. Don't go away.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. We've got Monday's Candy now. If you like Star Wars, good news. Looks like it's coming true, Josh.
Yeah, US ready to fight in space if we have to. That's not very good, is it? Sorry. Says military official. This is he's called Brig Gen Jesse, which is a strange name, Brig Gen. I don't know if that's American.
Brigadier General.
Oh, okay, that makes more sense, yeah. Okay. Jesse Morehouse. By the way, just before anybody tweets that I'm an idiot, that was the joke.
You can still tweet that he's an idiot.
Yeah, but don't say that. Yeah, okay, fine. He's from US Space Command, and he was speaking at the US Embassy in London. And it's quite interesting, actually, because this is arguably one of the futures of warfare. Is going to be shooting down each other's satellites, because as we become more and more dependent on satellites for intelligence, for mobile phones, for all these different things, that's the next level. But when you shoot down a satellite, it sort of spreads the debris all like for thousands of miles and whatever, and then has a big impact on other satellites. So it's actually a sort of it's a nuclear option.
You can get that. I think is it the Gessler or some effect where it creates a ripple effect,
sort of,
and more and more.
So now people are not
satellites.
testing these missiles and whatever. But it turns out China, they've got like a satellite that's got like an arm that can plant explosives into the thruster. There's all these like cool things going on.
Yeah, but it's made in China. Do you know what I mean? So it's.
So you think they're going to sabotage the ones they sell to us?
Yeah. Well, no. I
That'd
just
be
think
crazy.
it's not going to be that good, mate. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, really? You don't think they know what they're doing?
No, mate.
All right, let's see if your phone works on the way home.
No, I haven't got a Huawei phone, so I'll be fine.
Okay, well, moving on, we've got the Mail now, and a Stanford professor seems to be agreeing with David Icke, Francis.
Yeah, so a Stanford professor, which is one of the most prestigious universities in the world. Aliens have been on Earth for a long time and are still here. And if you go onto the comedy circuit, you would have to agree with him. A professor at Stanford University claims that aliens have been on planet Earth and are still here. As he says, experts are working on reverse engineering UFOs that have crash landed. So this is Dr. Gary Nolan speaking at a conference in Manhattan last week titled The Pentagon, Extraterrestrial Intelligence and Crashed UFOs. He's an immunologist, so I don't know what he knows about UFOs.
COVID.
Yeah, exactly, mate. It was started by the UFOs. And he's a Nobel Prize nominee. But anyway, he's saying that aliens are amongst us, and they have been for a long time. It's just people, unlike him, aren't smart enough to spot them.
But that's basically what he says. It's like, everyone else is too thick to spot the paradigms. He says, I have good reason to trust a number of individuals. Mate, that ain't scientific fact. Yeah. Trust me, I met him in a pub and then we had a really intimate night together. He wouldn't lie to me. Yeah. I mean, I gave him a job on my TV show. Anyway, but and then someone else comes out and says, yeah, it's all hearsay. Right. Yeah. So essentially, but I'm open to the idea.
And it's interesting that this is an esteemed professor. You're a Nobel Prize nominee.
Exactly. So, and I just love that argument. Listen, shut up. Do you have a Nobel Prize, mate? No. So you don't know about aliens.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, we've got the Daily Mail now with scientific proof that Britain is much more miserable than it used to be, Josh.
Indeed, but not as miserable as the rest of the world is the idea. This is the world's least miserable, aka happiest, countries are revealed, and both the UK and the US rank in the top 30. So they've been drip feeding this story for about 3 weeks now, because before we had the actual most miserable countries, Zimbabwe and some other places, but now they've gone up to the top 30, and we're doing all right. We're 29th. Out of
smashing.
Now, Switzerland is the best country, but again, this is all about inflation, essentially. So that it's got, even though everywhere is suffering, and he says, this person who's doing the survey says that we would be higher if it wasn't for our terrible inflation.
But inflation is everywhere. I mean,
it does, but for us particularly bad.
For Britain to go from 4th in the sort of in the happiness to 29th, I mean, that's a massive slide, because other countries have had inflation.
But the increase. But I just want to say, you don't want to live in Switzerland. It's boring.
It looks nice.
It looks nice.
It looks really nice.
Boring.
Look, here's the thing, right? The worse it gets in this country, the more British people love it, because we love moaning. We love moaning.
But we'd moan anyway.
Yeah, exactly. But the further it goes down, we'll just go, yeah, told you it was rubbish.
Well, Francis, what do you prefer, moaning or queuing?
Moaning or queuing? I like queuing.
To queue to moan.
I like queuing whilst moaning, and moaning whilst I'm in the queue.
OK, we've got the Daily Star now copying and pasting a press release from a dating app, Francis.
So, yes, this copying and releasing a
Cougar capital.
Oh, the cougar capital of Britain. The UK revealed its grannies in area can't keep away from toy boys. So we're ending strong. Basically, if you want to pick up an elderly woman who's up for it, Joshy.
If you're young.
Yeah, if
I'm not young though. So.
They
don't want someone young. They want someone young.
You mate, get a syrup on you and a little trim, you'll be there, right? And go to Eastbourne.
Call Philip Schofield.
Call Philip Schofield. Go to Eastbourne. You'll be in. That's because that is the place to pick up the older ladies.
So Eastbourne is where the most cougars are?
Yeah.
That's what they're saying, according to this app. Basically, people, older women are on this app going, I want a young bloke.
Is this an app specifically for older women?
No, it's just an app.
It's just an app.
What's it called? Since they sent this press release to the Daily Star.
It's called Grindr.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I didn't even know what a cougar was. I was thinking this is like an animal-based story.
Oh, like somebody actually... I mean, that'd be quite risky.
Yeah, if you want to go to Eastbourne and there's lots of sort of released cats on the loose.
I mean, the last thing you want to be doing is trying to take one for a romantic dinner.
Indeed. Are you trying to fill time?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Anyway, moving on. We've got the Daily Mail now, and Harambe was the gorilla who defined the memes of a generation. Does he still live on in your heart, Josh?
The world has... I didn't even know who Harambe was until today.
You evil, callous man.
I thought Harambe was a cougar in Eastbourne or something like that.
Yeah.
The world has... But supposedly the world hasn't been the same since. Tributes pour in to slain gorilla Harambe on the 7th anniversary of his death after a toddler fell into his enclosure at Cincinnati Zoo. This sounds very much like the plot to Anchorman.
Oh, we've got images. Oh, no, wait, that's you. Oh, no,
Look, he's got hair.
Yeah.
So, he's... And he was shot.
Like
a toddler...
Can you
he's
spot
doing
the
some
difference?
proper,
If anybody's listening on radio, then we're showing pictures of Harambe the gorilla next to Josh, and I think Josh is on the left, but it's hard to tell.
Yeah, I know. I can see. There is a resemblance. It has to be said.
Yeah.
This toddler crawled into his pen, and someone then shot him. I don't know if it was it the zoo guards shot him? Or, it wasn't like an American. It would be kind of cooler in a way if it was like just some American guy. I've got a gun.
Yeah, which they do.
Yeah, it's like this is the excuse. They're just desperate, aren't they, to use their guns? They're like, finally, I could shoot a gorilla, and then claim that and then they're like, they're really hunters, but actually, so that maybe there's a conspiracy. Is there Harambe
get the
conspiracies
trophy
out
on
there?
the wall?
Yeah, it makes it true. So, but I think out of all the people who should have been shot, because the gorilla did nothing. He didn't do anything. He wasn't behaving aggressively.
He didn't hurt the child.
He wasn't hurting the child. Nothing happened.
Behaving gorilla-y.
Right, OK. This child basically jumped into the enclosure, shoot the mum. Shoot the mum.
Okay?
That's because then this is never going to happen again. You put a marker in the sand, none of this happens.
Or build a better fence.
Shoot the mum.
Maybe.
Or build a what?
Better fence?
Build a better fence. Toddler. I mean, I'm amazed that toddler could. But I mean, if you go to the zoo, it often looks quite hard for the animals to get out, but difficult. I mean, but easy for people to get in.
Yeah, I mean, she might have had more than one child, to be fair.
Still no excuse, mate. Listen, if your child falls into an enclosure with a wild animal...
When?
That child's gone.
Yes, so make another one.
Do you think that child... But you're glad... If it's the child or the gorilla, who are you going to...
I'm going for the gorilla.
This debate is fascinating, but we're going to have to stop.
More.
The show is nearly over.
No, it's not.
Quick look at Monday's front pages. The Daily Mail has TV doctor hits out at toxic this morning. The Telegraph leads with price caps will create shortages, Prime Minister warned. The Times has British police bid to stop migrants leaving Africa. The Guardian go with Met Police to stop going to mental health call-outs. The Mirror has Holly, I'll be staying. And finally, the Daily Star has Dr. Ranj blasts bully culture at ITV. And those were your front pages. And that's all we've got time for. Thanks so much to my guests, Josh, Howie and Francis Foster. I'm back tomorrow at 11 p.m. with Josh and Simon Evans taking the hot seat. And if you're watching at 5 a.m, stay tuned for breakfast. I'll be Leo Kearse. Bye.
Bye. Oh, there's more!
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, I'm Rory Smith in the GB Newsroom. ITV has denied that This Morning is under review following reports the show could be axed. Sources have told GB News that bosses have just 7 days to save the programme following the Philip Schofield affair. Staff members who raised concerns about the TV presenter's actions say executives need to prove they're properly addressing the issue. The broadcaster has confirmed the show will air tomorrow, but viewer opinions vary over the fallout.
It's not really for us to judge someone. I mean, what he did, if it's true that this young chap was 18, it's nothing to do with us. I think he should speak to his family.
I will say that I think perhaps the show needs fresh people on. I think that the show really relied on the chemistry that Holly and Phil had.
For me, I'm less keen to watching the programs with them. As they split, I'm all right, and I think that Holly's gonna get the career even bigger now, you know.
I like Phil and Holly, so I'm very sad to see them go, because I love them both. So it's a pity, really. And I was shocked to hear about Phil, because I didn't think he'd do anything like that, be so deceitful.
A 5-year-old girl has died following a house fire in Pembrokeshire. Despite the efforts of emergency services, Alicia Salisbury passed away at the scene of the blaze in the Ponty-Glacier area last night. Her family, who described her as a beautiful daughter and sister, are being supported by specialist officers.
The force says it's working to establish the cause. The government is launching an ad campaign to stop people from crossing the channel. The advert, set to be circulated in Albania next week, will warn people they face being detained and removed if they make the journey. Critics have already branded it as pointless, saying it won't deter them. Well, a record number of people made the crossing in small boats last year, and more than 6,000 have been intercepted so far this year. Supermarkets could be asked to introduce a price cap on basic food to help struggling households. The government is reportedly drawing up plans suggesting the move, but a Treasury source told the Sunday Telegraph it would be voluntary. The scheme would see retailers charging the lowest possible amount for products like bread and milk. Well, food prices, which are expected to keep rising, have increased by 19.1% in the year to March. TV, online, DAB plus radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now, though, it's back to Free Speech Nation.
A new scandal erupts regarding the trans charity Mermaids. Baroness Faulkner is subjected to a witch hunt by activists, and Budweiser tries to win back its customer base by teaming up with Harley Davidson. This is Free Speech Nation. Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. So this is the show where we take a look at culture, current affairs and politics. And of course, we're going to have the latest from those lovable culture warriors who, free of charge, kindly provide us with enough material for a 2-hour show every single week. So coming up on the show tonight, we're going to be meeting with the former civil servant who has been awarded a 6-figure settlement after being fired for gross misconduct when she blew the whistle on the politicisation of the Department for Work and Pensions. American philosopher Peter Boghossian will be here to discuss whether wokeism is on the retreat. Let's hope so. We're going to ask politics professor Matthew Goodwin whether rising immigration numbers could mean disaster for the Tories at the election next year, and we're going to investigate an apparent witch hunt aimed at the equality boss Baroness Faulkner by trans activists. I'm going to be talking to Helen Joyce about that one, and of course myself and my fantastic panel will be answering questions from our lovely studio audience. So with that in mind, let me introduce my comedian panellists for this week, Diane Spencer and Leo Kearse. Hello, both. You've been to Amsterdam, I believe, this week. How was it?
It was absolutely magical. I even got to try some of my Dutch.
Oh, really? You know Dutch?
Ik wil graag een zwarte koffie, alstublieft, which means I will have a black coffee, please.
And that's all you need, really,
That is all I
yes.
well, that, and I was trying to work out how to say my husband will pay.
Yeah.
I didn't quite get that one.
That's quite an important thing. How are you, Leo?
Yeah, I went to Putney.
You know what? It's just as good in its own way, I think. I think all these canals and beautiful museums are overrated.
Yeah. In Putney.
In Putney, that's right. OK, well, look, we've got this great studio audience. Let's not waste them. We'll get a question first from Susan. Hi, Susan.
Hi. Should a trans lobby group help plan NHS treatment for children?
Yeah, this is just broken. This is big news. The Telegraph broke this one. They revealed that the trans lobby group Mermaids was actually helping to draft NHS plans for treating children who were questioning their gender. This is, of course, at the Tavistock Clinic, which, as we know since the Cass interim report, was deemed to be unsafe for children. But this is very interesting. I'm sure you've both read about this. But what had happened here is that it was requested, you know, in other words, they were saying to the Tavistock, well, did you have any direct connection with Mermaids? Did you have any direct connection with Susie Green, who was the chairman at the time? They said, no, we don't have any documents like that. And then they got pushed on it, Freedom of Information request and all that. Turns out there's 300 pages of documents linking the two. So I'm not saying the Mermaid, that they were lying, or the Tavistock was lying. I'm just saying that they forgot